Hey everybody, this is Dream, and today we have a 14-game Major League Baseball slate. We do have some weather concerns today, so we'll get into those. The New York Yankees Baltimore game, the Philly Pittsburgh game, and the Cleveland Chicago White Sox game. There's a couple other games too that have some rain around, but it doesn't look like that will affect those games. Those three games do have potential delays, so do keep that in mind on the slate. Before I get started, can you guys smash that like and subscribe button? It really helps the channel a lot. Let's go and get our top pitchers here. So Garrett Cole is our top overall. He does have a 30 fantasy point ceiling. He's only hit that twice since the start of the season, though. He's a little bit risky today against Baltimore, because the matchup isn't the best. But he is in his 15 to 25 point range in this, most likely, and a 20 fantasy point upside game is definitely in play here, as he's had two really solid games the last two games. He can even give up a couple earned runs if he can get a bunch of strikeouts, which he's definitely capable of doing today. Then we'll look at Kevin Gossman for Toronto. Now, he draws some really good metrics for this game. He has some really nice upside here. He has only been under 17 fantasy points three times all season long, which gives him a high floor, and he has a decent ceiling as well. The Angels have some guys that can hit, and of course Otani is there. But you can limit if he can limit the earned runs, he should be able to get enough strikeouts to get over 25 fantasy points. 18 to 25 range is in play for sure right here. And then we'll look at Scherzer for the Mets. He's in play as well for the Mets here against Washington. He's been pretty solid, but not quite as consistent as some of the others. But he is capable of a 20 to 25 fantasy point range game here. His K rate has been mostly good. In five of the last seven games, he's been over 22 fantasy points, which gives him a lot of upside in this matchup. I also like Wheeler here against Pittsburgh, as he's got a pretty good matchup here, and he has been pitching pretty well, though he has had tendency to give some earned runs up. But I still like him quite a bit on the slate. Maybe into our catchers here. We're going to start with Will Smith. He's obviously the most expensive guy we're going to look at here. Well, actually not. But Will Smith is pretty good right lately at 357 batting average. He's also got home run potential here. Now, he's only had one home run in the last 10 games. The last couple games, he's hit the ball really well, though. He's had some good hitting games and three multi-hit games over the last 5 or 6 games. So I really like his upside here, especially in a plus matchup here against struggling pitcher. Then we'll look at Shea Lingerlees for Oakland. Sorry if I'm butchering your name. He doesn't have a lot of upside here other than home run potential. He is in Colorado, which gives him a lot of help, and he's facing a pitcher in Freeland who has been really bad lately, so I do like his upside. Adley Rutschman is also in play here at catcher for Baltimore. He has been somewhat inconsistent throughout the season, and he had been in a little bit of a slump, but the last couple games he's been hitting the ball a little bit better, and he's got some home run potential here. So I do like his upside, though he is fairly expensive. Tom Murphy is also in play for Seattle. He's very cheap, and he's hit the ball really well lately with a 310 batting average over the last 10 games. He's had some really good games, yeah, and he has home run potential here, which is what really gives him the fantasy point upside. He's also dirt cheap, which helps pay up at other positions. And then Bo Naylor, if he draws a start today, he'll have some really good metrics for this game. He's hitting the ball extremely well with three home runs in the last 10 games. He's got really nice home run upside, and he has really good potential here. And he's very cheap, which definitely helps a lot as well. Maybe in the first base here, we'll look at Bryce Harper first for Philly. He's hitting the ball pretty solidly so far this season, though he hasn't had the home runs that we expect. He does have that metric today, though, as he's hitting the ball pretty solid the last 4 games with 6 hits in those games, and he's scoring a lot of runs as well. He's also not striking out much, which definitely helps and gives him some nice upside here. Matt Olson is in play for Atlanta. Now, Atlanta stacks are going to be popular today in this situation. However, they are very expensive and hard to roster as a result. But he's been hitting the ball really well. He's had two home runs the last 10 games, and he has nice upside here. He's just a solid option on the slate. Josh Naylor is a core play. Who has just been really solid recently. He had even three home runs the last 10 games, but he's had a bunch of RBIs, and he even has had a couple of stolen bases recently. Though he's a little bit boom or bust sometimes, he definitely draws good metrics here, and he's had good enough, and his price has finally come back down a little bit, which helps roster him in this plus matchup here. Then we'll look at Luke Rayleigh for uh, Tampa Bay, and I do think he looks pretty solid today, though he's been inconsistent throughout the season. He does have home run potential here. He can also play in the outfield. Then we'll look at Kirilloff for Minnesota. If he draws a start today, he is probably not going to play, but I'm just mentioning him in case he does. I do think he might come back today, but we'll have to wait and see. He's hit the ball really well, though, recently, and if he can draw a start here, he'll be somebody worth considering, though he is had a shoulder injury, so I do think he is a little bit of a concern today, but he is definitely in play. You can also consider Vlad Jr. and Pete Alonso at this position. Moving to second base, we'll start with Mookie Betts for the Dodgers. Now, he's been in a little bit of a slump the last few games. But before that, he was hitting the ball extremely well, and he is still hitting the ball. He's just not getting a bunch of fantasy points, which is what we need. As you can see in the last few games, he's got hits in every game, but he hadn't had a 10 fantasy point game. Obviously, he's got home run upside, though, and this matchup really gives him a lot of potential from that perspective. G-Loff from, and I don't know if I'm saying your name wrong, from Oakland, he's hitting the ball somewhat inconsistent, but when he does get hits, he is turning some fantasy points. He also has some stolen base potential, and he's actually hitting the ball decently, in some of these games. Though his strikeouts a little bit much, he's a little bit overpriced here due to the situation, but he's definitely in play here. Julian from Minnesota is in play. He's hitting the ball extremely well, and he's got a nice plus matchup here against Kansas City. He's had 3 home runs the last 10 games. He's got good metrics here, and he's just hitting the ball solidly. If he draws a start, he'll be somebody that I'm definitely going to have in my lineups today. Polanco is also potentially coming back today. We'll have to wait and see if he does draw the start. But if he does draw the start, or if he doesn't, if Julian doesn't play, he'll be somebody to consider at this position, as he had been really solid throughout the early in the season. At the start, but he's just been hurt a lot. So if he does play, though, he'll be in play. Then we'll look at Brandon Lowe for Tampa Bay. Now he's been very inconsistent and a boomer bust play throughout the season, but he draws good home run metrics here, and so I do think he's considerable on this particular slate. Then we'll look at Jose Ramirez for. Oops, sorry about that. Ramirez for Cleveland. He faces one of the weakest pitchers on the slate. He's also hitting the ball extremely well, and he's scoring fancy points in bunches as of late. Though he is somewhat of a home run requirement to be good here, he has hit a bunch recently, which give him some upside, and I do like his potential in this one. Then we'll look at Nolan Arenado uh, for St. Louis. Now he does draw a good matchup here. He's also hitting the ball extremely well. He's a guy that he typically gets a little bit streaky and has a string of really good games, and I think he's kind of in that right now. So he hasn't hit a ton of home runs the last couple 10 games, but he has two, and he's kind of due for one here as well. I really like his upside, and he's a little bit less expensive than some of the other expensive options. Austin Riley's also in play for Atlanta. He's obviously been absolutely smashing the ball with 6 home runs the last 10 games with a 317 batting average. He's striking out a little bit too much, but he does have really good metrics here. And if you can find a way to get a Atlanta stack in here, he'd be a guy to utilize from that team. Rafael Devers is also in play for Boston. He's a little bit underpriced for what he's been doing lately. With 5 home runs in the last 10 games, he's averaging almost 12 fantasy points a game, and he's had 3 straight games over 10 fantasy points, including 2 home runs in those 3 games. And I see that he could do that again today. Then we'll look at Chris Taylor for the Dodgers. He's been a little bit sneaky at times throughout the season, and this is a situation where he does draw good metrics. He's also getting hits in most games, and he doesn't need a ton to pay off here at this price point, so he definitely gives you some cheap option at this position. And then Eugenio Suarez for Seattle. He's been up and down throughout the season, but he draws good metrics for this game. Despite his batting average, he has home run potential here, and I like his upside in this matchup. Maybe in a shortstop, we'll look at Willie Adames for Milwaukee. Now he's facing a new pitcher in Atlanta, but I do think he draws really good metrics here. He has been boomer bust though, and so that is a little bit of a concern. But his batting average has been awful, but he does draw home run potential here. Bobby Witt Jr. for Kansas City also in play. He's also been somewhat of a slump, but he does draw great metrics, and occasionally he has home runs, and when he does, then he usually pays off a lot. And this is definitely a situation for him to do that. Ahmad Rosario is also in play for the Dodgers. He's hitting the ball really well in Cleveland throughout the season, but it looks like now he's with a new team and he looks to start off with a bang here. He's also priced pretty fairly for his potential, and he's hitting the ball pretty well. He's not a big home run threat, but he's definitely somebody to consider today. And then Diaz for Oakland. Now he's an interesting spot because he hasn't hit the ball very well this season, but he has hit the ball better recently. Still not turning in a bunch of fantasy points, but he is in Colorado, and that can give some utility here. He's extremely high risk Hail Mary type of option. Moving to outfielders, we're going to look at Aaron Judge. Now, I don't know if he's going to play today, but he is going to be activated, it looks like. And if that's the case, then he'll be somebody you have to consider because he can have home runs in just about any situation that he's in. And this draws a really good matchup here. Acuna is also in play for Atlanta as he has hit the ball extremely well lately. He has got home run potential, stolen base potential, and everything else. He's but definitely the NL MVP at this point. Mookie Betts is also available at the outfield. I've already talked about. Kyle Schwarber um, for Philly is in play here against Pittsburgh. He's been very inconsistent hitting the ball, but he is a home run or bust kind of guy, and so he probably won't do much other than strike out or hit a home run. And if he can hit a home run, he'll be a top tier option on the slate. Juan Soto is also in play for San Diego as he draws really good metrics here. He's also been hitting home runs, but his batting average could be better. He is averaging over 10 fantasy points a game, though, so he does have some upside here. Then we'll look at Rooker from Oakland. He draws a really good matchup here. He's also hitting the ball pretty decently. Not great. He's striking out too much, but he does draw a home run upside in this matchup, so I do think he's considerable here. Then we'll look at Grichuk for Colorado. He has just hit the ball extremely well recently, almost a 400 batting average the last 10 games. In fact, he's hit well ever since he started playing for the Rockies this season, and he draws good matchup metrics here. And obviously, like most guys in Colorado, his averages are higher at home than on the road. He has good home run potential here, and I like his upside. Then we'll look at Rayleigh for Tampa Bay, who can also play at first base, who I mentioned there. Then we'll look at Laureano. Sorry for butchering if I'm butchering your name for Oakland. He draws really good metrics here, despite the fact that he's had a terrible batting average over the last 10 games. He is due for a good game. He has had some good games throughout the year, and he is managing to, strike out a lot, which is the problem. But he does draw home run potential here, and so he is considerable here. Uh, then we'll look at Toscar Hernandez, who is a core play for me for Seattle. He is good in situations, and this is a situation where I like him a lot. He hasn't hit the ball particularly well. He's striking out too much, but he has home run potential, and he has some good upside as a result. Then we'll look at Michael Harris um, for Atlanta. Now he's been up and down throughout the season, but he's hitting the ball extremely well with a 365 average lately. He draws good potential, and he has nice upside, though he's high risk, high reward on this particular slate. Stephen Kwan is also in play. Oops, sorry, for Cleveland, as he draws really good metrics here. He's hitting the ball really well. He even had a home run in the last 10 games. He also has some stolen base potential, and he doesn't really ever strike out, which gives him a lot of upside as well. I think he's only struck out once every 2 games throughout the entire season. He also has hit the ball really solidly most games, and so he does draw some good upside here. With that said, guys, thank you for liking, commenting, subscribing. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them below, and have a nice day, guys.